Hi, so today we'll go over the representative infectious diseases by continents for the third chapter, Easy Comprehension of Infectious Disease. You should especially be well aware of endemic diseases and make sure to take the vaccine, preventative medicine, and antimalarial before you go. I have picked the representative diseases by continents, so the list includes dengue, MERS, COVID-19, Ebola virus, and Zika. So today we will be briefly talking about the dengue fever from Southeast Asia, MERS and COVID-19 from the Middle East, Ebola virus disease from Africa, and Zika virus disease from South America. In Southeast Asia, there are mosquito-borne viruses malaria and dengue fever. But there are also waterborne infectious diseases, Salmonella typhi, cholera, and hepatitis A. In the Middle East, there are MERS and COVID-19. The United States might look safe, but there are also Lyme disease and mosquito-borne infectious disease, West Nile virus. In South America, there's also malaria. I've seen many people travel to South America these days. Many people visit Machu Picchu or Bolivia. There are also yellow fever, malaria, and recently Zika virus disease, which can lead to microcephaly when transmitted from a pregnant mother to her unborn child. You should be well informed of the infectious diseases in each country, how to get vaccinated, and what kind of preventative regulations should be followed to finish your journey safely. This is the occurrence of legal communicable diseases from overseas by Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, which were diagnosed and reported from abroad in 2000 to 2019. The most common disease is dengue fever. 273 people were reported in 2019, and most of them were from Southeast Asia. Recently, many people visited Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. And many were diagnosed with dengue fever and then shigellosis, food poisoning, hepatitis A, Salmonella typhi, and malaria. Also, recently in 2018 and 19, measles broke out, and it was well known that many were infected from countries like the Philippines and Vietnam and carried it over to Korea. As global warming further develops, the temperature and humidity go up. The number of mosquitoes and ticks increase. Contamination progresses, ghettoism increases among the people living in urban areas, and the world is becoming more and more vulnerable to infectious diseases. So the most problematic part in endemic diseases is waterborne and foodborne infectious diseases caused by the contamination of water and food. Cholera, salmonella, giardiasis, and other diseases like diarrhea. These are the most problematic diseases, and the second most problematic diseases are mosquito or tick-borne infectious diseases. So, as the number of mosquitoes and ticks, which possess many pathogens, increases with global warming, various infectious diseases like malaria, dengue fever, Lyme disease, Zika virus, and chikungunya are also increasing. The most common disease we get from Southeast countries is dengue fever. In fact, dengue fever is actually very problematic in Southeast Asia, and it also occurs in Africa and South America. Aedes aegypti is what carries the Zika virus, and when a person is bitten by this mosquito, she is infected. The characteristic of this disease is that people are infected more easily in urban areas rather than jungle. Many inhabit urban areas like Singapore especially. That's why in Singapore, if there are any spots for stagnant water, people are fined. For dengue fever, 4 to 13 days after a person is bitten by the mosquito, symptoms like fever, headache, muscle pain appear after the incubation period. Other symptoms like rashes can also be considered as the initial symptoms of a cold. As you can see in the pyramid here, over 90% of the patients are without any symptoms. Within the remaining 10%, the fever begins, and at its worst, a shock or decrease in blood pressure can happen. This is why it could also lead to death. But this is only the case of under 5%. Most of them don't show any symptoms and tend to recover within 1 to 2 weeks. Now we will go over MERS, which is common in the Middle East. This is similar to the recently emerging coronavirus. In September 2019, a pneumonia patient died with an unknown cause in Saudi Arabia. When the cause was investigated, it was found to be the emerging coronavirus, and it was officially named the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus. In Saudi Arabia, the MERS coronavirus originally started from camels, which moved on to human infection and settled as a kind of endemic. The fatality rate is 35%, which is considerably high. If you look at the red cup here, between May and June of 2015, the disease collectively broke out among Koreans, and it is indicated here. Many Koreans are living in the Middle East, most as construction workers, and also visit as a stopover place, so we should continue to be careful with the inflow of MERS from the Middle East. Bats have it and it passed camels to humans. It originally broke out among camels and was transmitted to humans. In the Middle East, it was mainly transmitted among families or collectively in a hospital, which is why it's still a big problem that it settled as a kind of endemic. The coronavirus enters into the body through an acceptor called DPP4 in the mucosa cell in the respiratory system, causes pneumonia and death. The fatality rate in 2015 in Korea was around 20%. The problem is, it doesn't have a specific cure or general vaccine. Only conservative therapy using medical fluid, quarantine, respirator, and other treatments to help raise blood pressure is available. As of now, there are no antiviral agents or cures for the diseases. Now in Africa, there are of course yellow fever, Lassa fever, malaria, and infections through parasites. But in Korea, there was the epidemic of Ebola hemorrhagic fever. Ebola first occurred as an epidemic hemorrhagic fever near the Ebola River in the Central African Republic in 1976. So nobody has expected that it would spread globally, but it broke out in West Africa, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, and also spread to Europe and the United States through Korean tourists. The Ebola virus also infects humans through bats. In Africa, people eat bats as a source of protein, which made them more prone to the Ebola virus. The fatality rate of the disease is 70% to 90%, which is quite high. This is also why we're so afraid of the disease. So Ebola is transmitted among humans through bats, which is the natural reservoir. Its transmission ability is not as fast as the COVID-19, but those who are affected vomit blood, and the virus can also be transmitted through feces. Its high fatality rate and absence of cure and vaccines are what make the disease more fearful. Especially in Africa, people were exposed to the blood of the dead while kissing at the funeral and washing the body of the dead. Also, the doctors and nurses who were treating the Ebola patients were also exposed and died. Ebola virus attacks the endothelial site within the body and causes bleeding. It also causes blood clots and inflammatory response. Even though there's no antiviral agent, the vaccine for the Ebola virus was recently invented. The Ebola virus vaccine was once invented at the end of 2019 and in July 2020 and was permitted by the United States and Western Europe. Lastly, the Zika virus infectious disease, which is problematic in South America. There are many kinds of endemics in South America such as malaria, yellow fever, and other diseases from parasites, but the recent problem was the Zika virus that started at the end of 2015. Zika virus first started in the Zika forest in 1940 to 1950, but wasn't really known to many people until recently. But in 2015, as the increasing number of pregnant women gave birth to babies with microcephaly, the investigation started. As a result of the investigation, women who were infected with the Aedes mosquito-borne Zika virus started giving birth to infants with microcephaly, and therefore became a serious social issue. Let's look at the history of the Zika virus. It first started in Africa and moved eastward. It first moved to Singapore and other Southeast countries. in 2006. In 2014 to 16, it was discovered in Micronesia, the Pacific, and the South Pacific Islands. Later in 2015 to 16, it was again found in South America and was spread to Cuba and even Florida. It didn't have any particular symptoms, so many people considered it to be less serious. Not all infectious diseases are fatal, but those with fatal symptoms are considered serious. For example, if deformed children are born, such as encephalitis and other symptoms. Zika virus was also known to the masses when it was first discovered to cause microcephaly. This is the epidemic curve of the Zika virus. From 2007 to 2018, it first broke out at the end of 2015 and 2016, and was first found when series of microcephaly occurred among fetuses in Brazil. There is no antiviral agent or vaccine for the Zika virus either. When pregnant women are infected with the Zika virus, it can be delivered to the fetus through the placenta to cause deformities such as microcephaly. It can also invade the nervous system, especially nervous tissue, encephalin, and create diseases that prevent the fetus's head from growing. When a person is infected with the Zika virus, it can also lead to eye inflammation, arthritis, fever, fatigue, and other symptoms of a cold. Once it reaches the fetus, it can lead to deformity. So the most important part is to keep pregnant women from visiting those areas. So these are the representative infectious diseases by continent. I hope everyone who will be visiting foreign countries is well prepared to prevent those diseases from affecting you, with vaccines and other preventative measures.